you are the spiritual leader of 2.5 or 3 million African-American Muslims.
That's what I'm told.
That's what you're told. Well, that's what I'm told as well. And that I do know for a fact that you are a person, a man, who is greatly respected and someone who whose opinions are strongly sought after. So I don't think there could be a better time in history than to come to you and ask you to help all of us understand Islam and really help us develop an insight into what's happening. From your point of view, what is happening in terms of Osama bin Laden and his version of Islam?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Osama bin Laden is really has been accepted as the leader of Islamic community life worldwide, or even anywhere in Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure of that. I would think that he's not. I would think that the Islamic world is still divided by many different madhabs or schools of thought, and also by many personalities like Osama bin Laden. But definitely he has captured the attention of the world because he's identified as the mastermind behind the horrible thing that was done to our country. I feel that most of the Muslims of the world are relying upon their local people, the religious leaders, for understanding and guidance. And a great number, maybe many times bigger than that number, are depending on themselves. They go to their holy book privately, and they depend on their own opinions and mind and thinking. And thank God that most of the Muslims don't accept to have their freedom taken away. Most of the Muslims, even in countries where the freedom is taken away, most of the Muslims insist that they go privately to the Word of God, and they know our Prophet Muhammad, they know his life, and that's what is really ruling in the Islamic world, even though you can't see that because the powerful Islamic states, the political order, the governments are not accepting that the people express themselves openly and freely.
Among those who are not Muslim, there is the tendency, I have read a lot of articles, there is the tendency to take the belief of an Islamic cult or sect and generalize it to the world's entire population of Muslims. For example, I read an article by one writer who said, at one time, the President Bush is trying to convince the world that Muslims are peaceful, that a handful of Muslims are doing these bad things. But what I'm seeing now is so many Muslims who agree with Osama bin Laden that this must be what Islam basically teaches. How do you respond to that?
The developments in the world presently, not to mention the crusades that's still in the minds of the Muslim world and the world, and not to mention 1947 when Israel was established, or when they were establishing Israel as a state in what was the home of the Jews and the Palestinians. The things that are happening now, like the problem for the Palestinians and the Israelis, and Kashmir in India, all of these troubles are on the minds of Muslims, especially Muslim leaders. And we can't just look at what happened on the 11th of September and isolate it from all these other things. What we have is a damaged psyche of the Muslim world, mostly the leaders. They have a damaged psyche. When I say a damaged psyche, I'm sure they won't agree with me, but when I say a damaged psyche, I mean that these troubles of the world, in the world, that have been used by them in their thinking, to say that this is why we don't have peace in the world. This is why. It's because Christianity fought against us and the Crusades, and because colonial days, they imposed their life on us in our countries under colonialism, and under the colonial states. We had to give up our life, and because of what they did in the Middle East to establish Israel over there on us and take Jerusalem and make this capital, all those things are on their mind. So with these things on their mind, naturally they would get bitter, become more bitter and more bitter, and some enrage and become very, very destructive, self-destructive as well. So we have to look at the whole picture to see what is the psyche of the Muslim world. And when I say the Muslim world, I'm speaking mainly of Muslim leaders who influence the Muslim world to their way of thinking, etc. Now, there are readings in the Quran, portions of the Quran, that address the problem that the Palestinians are having in Israel. But never are we to become the wrongdoers in the eyes of God, because we want to get at wrongdoers.
Your school of thought is basically traditional Sunni Islam.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Someone came to you, and I'd like for you to help me understand this because I don't know the details. Someone came to you approximately 5 years ago.
Yes. Yes.
From a country in the Middle East.
Yes.
A very influential and wealthy man.
Yes.
And attempted to get you to teach a form of Islam or to promote a form of Islam. Am I accurate in saying that that form of Islam is closer to what we call Wahhabism?
Well, just for a little clarification, this person did not indicate to me that he came with any interest in me accepting any particular school of thought. This person came to me and impressed me with this idea that you need to have us as your big brother, pardon me, as your father, and you and your other leaders, you are brothers, and you need us as your father. And left me with the impression that I was to not differ with them, have no points of view that differ with him and those associated with him back in his country in the leadership. And it so happened that the school of thought for that country is Wahhabi school of thought.
Now, can you explain for the audience what Wahhabi Islam is like?
Well, I can't because it's made public. I don't live in Saudi Arabia.
So we are talking about Saudi Arabia.
Yes, I visit there, but I don't live there.
It's been compared to the type of fundamental Islam that is advocated by the Taliban.
I know, but
would that be unfair?
Well, in my opinion, I would say that I have nothing in my knowledge and in my experience with the king. I've been the guest of 2 kings of Saudi Arabia, and I have nothing in my knowledge and experience to support that. My knowledge and experience tells me that Saudi Arabia's leadership is moderate when we look at some extreme nations of Islam that we have now, or I would say Muslim centers that are in the news. When we look at them, I would say Saudi Arabia is a moderate, not an extremist. And I would also say that Saudi Arabia is mainly interested in getting the Quran, our holy book, and the pure teachings of Islam, life of our Prophet, to Muslims, and that's their charity to the Islamic world. We received many Qurans and much good help from them. Even with our school curriculum, they were ready to help us to develop our school curriculum. I don't believe that Saudi Arabia is in the hands of extremists. I believe that there are extremists among them.
If you had accepted, and I want to be clear here, you rejected this offer.
Yes.
Why did you reject the offer of becoming the child to a new parent?
Well,
the religious offspring, if I'm
yes.
saying this correctly.
Well, I guess it's because my father raised me well, and my mother did a marvelous job.
And translated, that means what?
I have my own mind, and I won't give it up.
Well, I want you to help me understand, because I don't, what the difference is between what you're teaching, what you were teaching, and what you thought you would have to teach if you entered into this new relationship with this emissary from Saudi Arabia. We're not attacking Saudi Arabia. We're certainly not attacking the religion of Saudi Arabia.
Definitely not. When I was a child, young as I can remember, maybe 5 or 6 years old, I can recall myself sitting in the seat with all the other Muslims listening to my father preach to the congregation. What impressed me most as a child, and it stayed with me until now, is what he said Islam was then. He said Islam is freedom, justice, and equality. And no one can take that from me. Freedom, justice, and equality.
If you had entered into this relationship, do you fear you would have lost your freedom, your equality?
Yes.
And you would not have gotten justice?
No, exactly.
Well, then, was there...
For my soul,
well,
and for my mind...
Right. Well, you are and were the leader of 3 million African Americans who are members of your Islamic organization. You are the spiritual leader. So you would have been taking black Americans who are Muslims in a different direction, would you have not? Would that not have been the result if you had accepted this relationship?
Well, certainly. If I had accepted that relationship, I would have given up my leadership and abandoned what I feel to be my duty to my community.
What would your community have gotten in terms of spiritual
They would have gotten a man, and they probably would have accepted me because they love me. They would have gotten a man for their leader who would have not been their leader. Their leader would have been whoever was dictating thought, opinion, thinking, and policy to them through me.
You would have become a conduit.
Yes, sir.
All right. What I want you to help me understand is, what would the message have been through you as a conduit?
The message.
What would you have told these 3 million African Americans Islam was? That is different from what you continue to tell them and what you tell them today.
Well, I would have simply. I would have been in a position to tell them that Islam, for you to see this Islam, look abroad.
Look abroad, and look to Saudi Arabia.
I don't want to say Saudi Arabia.
You don't have to say Saudi Arabia, but they would have to look abroad.
Look abroad.
And if they looked abroad, they would have seen a more extremist, fundamentalist Islam than you teach.
Well, I wasn't seeing it as extremists. I wasn't seeing it even as fundamentalists. I was seeing it as ritualistic. They would have had a more ritualistic life than a rational life.
Now, explain that, please.
They would have simply been following the rituals of prayer, the rituals of Hajj, etc., but not being free thinkers.
How to be a Muslim in America. They would not have been adapting and learning. You emphasize, do you not?
Their rational mind would have been sealed.
not use.
Against influencing their thinking as Muslims.
Would they have, in your opinion, been better Americans if they simply were ritualistic Muslims, or do you believe
they would have no place in America?
They would have no place in
This
America.
is the land of the free.
So they would not have been able, with this other ideology.
They would have been monsters and dummies walking around in America.
Monsters.
Dummies, zombies. In America, if you're not thinking on your own and somebody else is dictating your life and your thinking and everything, you're not human.
All right. Well, now let me be specific. September the 11th, year 2001 came along 5 years later. Had you in that 5-year period been teaching this other philosophy that someone wanted you to teach, in you in the conduit position where you were simply passing along ideology, would today in America, many, if not most of the members, the 3 million members of your Muslim organization, would they be more amenable to the message of Osama bin Laden's version of Islam?
I won't say to his version of Islam, because who knows his version of Islam? We don't know it.
Well,
But
if I may.
they would have been influenced by his popularity that has now been given to him because he is charged with being the mastermind of the attack upon our country. They would have been influenced by him. And I think many of them, if not 50% or more, many of them would have seen him as a hope for Islam. Because that's the tendency in most of the Muslims of the world. Because of that damaged psyche I mentioned to you early, how trouble have scarred them, and they charge the West with all the troubles, practically all those troubles, and maybe correctly. Because of that damaged Muslim psyche, most of the Muslims of the world are just desperately waiting to see who is going to be our deliverer, who is going to champion our cause. So when someone comes up and presented to them by Western press, they suspect the Western press, and they want to disbelieve the Western press because of the conditioning, bad experience, and hurt from the past that they charge to the West. So right away they want to reject the news coming from the West. So they're not going to read that news. They're going to read the news coming from Muslim print, Muslim media. And I would say the majority, 50% or more, would have been inclined to see America as the wrongdoer and find some way to cover or ignore all the wrong that has been charged to Osama bin Laden.
Am I incorrect in this analysis? Had you gone along and, in effect, turned over your community to an outside force when you were asked to do so, would America today not be a very different place, and would you have not, according to your own words, I'm not qualified to speak for you, but would you have not, through your capitulation to this other force, have created a fifth column of black people in the United States
Certainly.
who now would be ready to act against their own country?
Certainly. Yes, because at most of the methaps or schools, as presented by our leaders of this time, they do not tend to welcome thinkers who embrace the ideas, the great ideas of this nation or of the Western world. And if we had been influenced to accept their way of thinking, I doubt if our following would be patriotic in any degree.